Then I call to order the planning board for November 7th, 2023. We have a lot of stuff to do and we will get it done by 8:30. First order of business is approval of the minutes of October 3rd, 2023. Has everyone had an opportunity to look at it?
Yes.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of October
Hold on a
3rd,
second.
2023?
I'm just wondering if anyone's on Zoom, so we know who's in the room.
I'm still working on all that.
Okay, sorry to interrupt you.
That's all right.
Right, Marion Neutra, I need to admit. So Marion Neutra is coming up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening. So there's a motion on the table. Do I have a second?
So are we approving already, or are we
Yes.
making some corrections?
There will be a place for comments, so let's just roll.
Motion to, wait. So
Second.
Who moved?
But if we have discussion on the minutes for that next.
Yes. It's been moved and seconded. Are there any, is there any discussion regarding the minutes?
Yes.
Chris, who moved?
I did.
You made the motion, thank you.
Okay.
That's okay. Well, any discussion? Frank?
Yes, a couple things. It is a little bit picky, but I think that they're important.
That's okay.
So, under where it says minutes, it shows that we have 5 members, in attendance. But it says that it was approved 4-0, because I think that maybe one person came on late and wasn't there for the approval, so somehow we should indicate either who did or who did not.
Does it say at the top members present and then it says one name and it says arrived at a certain time, right?
Tardy.
So usually
So that person would be that person, and.
that's how I've always done it,
Okay.
if someone arrives
That's
late.
why I'm asking.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, this is another kind of picky, thing, is top of page 2, that, you know, we changed topics from, I guess, the next steps to, the affordable housing bylaw discussion, and there was no header on it. I don't know if we should.
No,
have a
it's
header on
fine.
that.
It's fine.
And that's all I have.
Okay. Addie,
No changes.
okay. So actually, there's no amendments. All those in favor of planning board minutes of October 3rd, 2023 as submitted, signify by saying aye. I'm gonna do a roll count, because I don't know if Rob's gonna be on. Will? Aye. Frank?
Aye.
Addie May?
Aye.
Chris is an aye. All right, so we have an A&R for 226 and 230 Western Ave. Do you want to talk about it, or you just want us to handle it? It's very, very straightforward.
Yep, I can talk about it real quick.
Yep.
Good evening, my name is Chris Galorio from GLM Engineering. I'm here to present a proposed A&R plan for 226, 230 Western Ave. Basically what had happened was the building department had issued a building permit to tear down the house and to retain the existing foundation. However, during construction, they found out that the foundation wasn't worth saving, so they had to demolish it and rebuild. And somehow a foot was added to the house. So it put it in violation of the left lot line. So now we're proposing to have an equal swap between the current property, 226, and the neighbor at 230, to rectify that and to put it a little bit more into compliance. And it is a pre-existing non-conforming lot anyway, but at least we'll maintain greater than, I believe it's a 30-foot,
You're
30-foot setback.
you're not making the non-compliance worse.
Correct.
All right. Is it, Gino and I have looked at it,
Anybody need to see the plan?
I've looked at it.
There's like 160 square foot area that you're swapping. It's really just adjusting the lot line it's one of the most minimal A&Rs I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's only, was 166 square feet being swapped to maintain that it's greater than 30 feet setback.
Addie May, have you seen it? You want to take a look? or-
Let's take a look. I mean,
There's another one over
I
here.
got another copy over there.
know that I've seen it.
Gino and I looked at it a few weeks ago already. I figured it was a septic thing, just by looking at it, but
Yeah, we still don't understand how the house grew by a foot. but when they put the new foundation in, it grew a little bit.
That's fine. Does anyone else have any questions? Do I have a motion to endorse the A and R for 226 and 230 Western Ave?
So moved.
Second.
Let's move second. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Will? Aye. Frank?
Aye.
Addie May?
Aye.
And Chris is an aye. Let's sign these so he can take his tonight.
Want to sign the Mylar and I can get the copies, or do you sign the copies as well?
We'll sign the copies, we'll sign the Mylar. It's gonna take 2 seconds and then we
That's
don't have to
fine.
worry about
Yep.
getting the herd together.
And he only needs the Mylar.
I only need the Mylar.
I know that.
But I mean, again, I can get copies of the Mylar signed to you tomorrow, if that's easier for you to, so we're not taking up too much of your time
You're not taking
by
up,
signing.
you're not taking up time, you pay for this. You're trying where your pen off. Oh, Frank, you took my pen.
Things going all around.
It is my dad's 93rd birthday.
Oh, wow. You still around to celebrate it?
Still getting speeding tickets.
Oh.
Nothing. This your pen, Frank? Oh, no, that's the one. Adding these one over here. That's okay.
So if we have one person
Yeah.
in, it's, IW iPad work.
You got that, and Addie needs to do this one here.
Frank,
Yeah.
we haven't. iPad work, is that what you said?
The IW iPad work.
We haven't talked about this hybrid format very much, but if Rob does join, if you can just note the
Yeah, right. I
time,
didn't want to roll it.
I know the time that someone joins,
Yeah.
I can't see when he joins,
Yeah.
and
Alright.
so if you write, if you end up hitting him.
Thank you very much for your time.
I guess I could either acknowledge on the video, you can watch the video.
And you don't need one of these.
I don't.
No, I
We will have an extra.
Yep, I can
But I
get
can't see
copies
who's
of
joining.
this tomorrow, so that's fine.
That's fine.
No, but if I were to say in the middle of the meeting,
Oh, yeah, I can look at my, yeah, I can know that. Yeah, if you just tell me that Rob has joined, I can know the time, that's fine.
and I'll try to write it down as well, so that it is. Yeah.
Okay, I'm all set with this?
You're all set.
All right, great, thank you very much,
Thank you
everybody.
very much.
Have a good night.
The rest of it. That's my pen. You
And
can have
if
that.
whoever joined as IW, if you would like to change your name on Zoom to identify yourself, you're welcome to do so.
I will take care of these later.
Frank, just let me know. Yeah.
All right. So I asked Gino to be here tonight because Gino's gonna be our 3A go-to guy. But I'm pleased to say that we have a new town planner. So it took longer than anyone could process. But I'm pleased to have Heidi here. Her official time, because she currently works at town hall already, and she can't work for two masters, I hate to say it like that. So November 20th will be the official start date. She's still gonna be transitioning a little bit from her old job, so the planning board office hours will be Monday through Thursday, 12 to 4, and on Thursdays, we're still gonna have our weekly meeting, so if anyone wants to meet, just call first, so we make sure we don't inadvertently have a quorum. I'm gonna ask, that starting that date, that the board does not reach out directly to Gino. The only people I want, Gino's gonna stay on as a consultant, as a consulting role, probably through town meeting, and I'm hoping June 1st. But I want everything to go through Heidi. So the only people I really want reaching out to Gino directly would be me, Heidi, town council, and the town administrator. That way, she's up and running and she's in the loop. If somebody has a question that needs to go to Gino, she'll be the one to send it to Gino. Is that fair? Is that fair to everyone? Does that make sense? You want to say hi?
Hello, thank you.
Welcome. I am sure she'll button down a lot of things that, and everyone at town hall knows her, loves her. She's gonna be very competent in the job, so I'm looking forward to it, and, I hope you don't regret it. Okay,
Do we need to, I mean, do we need to kind of ratify or is there any procedural thing that we should take care of or?
nope, already signed and hired. So,
Support here, but.
Yeah.
Just wanna make sure that
Yeah,
there's
no.
no process that we missed.
I don't think so. I think once I signed it and Jeremy signed it, we're good. What I would like to do next is, talk about the 3A draft. Again, we've tweaked this and tweaked this and tweaked this. There is something in here that's not still right that we need to correct. I'd like to approve, the draft tonight. Because what's gonna happen is, there's a lot of towns that their deadline's gonna be this spring, right?
No, December 31st.
Okay, so they're gonna be scrambling, so I wanna get this to them so we can get it back from the state, get it to town council, have our hearing in early February, and get ready for town meeting. I'm afraid if we wait, in other words, if there's things in here that we wanna tweak, let's take care of it tonight, so we can get this thing off our desk and get it to the state and make sure it complies. It doesn't mean that, we still can't change things. We probably will change things after the hearing, but I want to sort of get this off our desk and get it moving. So,
And the hearing, we don't have a date for that hearing.
yes, I do.
February 6th.
February 6th.
Yeah.
That's for, as part of the advisory hearings or just planning board?
That's
hearings?
going to be the planning board hearing.
I think it's also listed in this draft right here, that date.
Yep. And then we're going to talk about that in a little bit with the consultant, but that's in a little bit. So what do you think the best way to do this is just, I'm not going to read everything, but you want to just go page by page, Gino?
Yes, which we did the last time.
Correct.
And some changes were suggested then, so I thought we should concentrate on what those changes were, which are highlighted in red if you printed it out.
Okay.
One of the, not really a substantive thing, but a style thing is there's a purpose section in the front. And there was a second purpose section as part of the affordable housing section further on. And it was suggested that we clean that up. So I totally eliminated the purpose section under the affordability requirement and just put it all in. Half of them or more were redundant anyway. And so I used some of the language that came out of the affordable housing part and moved it up front to this section in the beginning.
Excuse me, Gino. Are you looking at the draft that says 10/23/23?
Yes.
Because I have the PDF and I printed it, and I don't see red.
Yeah,
I just see
Well,
black.
you have to turn on track changes, I guess, to see that. But if you have it
It's
as
a
a
PDF.
PDF,
Okay.
you can't do
So
it.
that's all we got was a PDF.
Okay. Well, anyway, so number one purpose is promote public health, safety, and welfare by encouraging different types of housing for households of all incomes, ages, and sizes. That was basically the red part, and I think that came from the purpose section.
Yep.
Next change is under the definitions, number 8, very simple change. Under the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, I added formerly Department of Housing and Community Development, because people are used
The
to.
only other, just reading that, is maybe in conjunction, since we have EOH, maybe it's self-explanatory, but so many people hear DHCD.
For DACD as
to
well.
just put, I don't know.
Funny, I almost did that, and I said,
I mean, it seems redundant, but just if we're.
You're right, people are used to saying DHCD.
yeah.
Okay,
Then again, the next one, number 21, under subsidized housing inventory, spelled out Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities.
and again, those were all my, sort of things, because EOHLC, nobody knows what that means, I mean, it might as well be Greek. So
Yeah,
let's just spell it out, and so everyone understands, and the more they hear it.
and I think the,
But your finger got stuck on the key because it's got two L's in livable.
oh, really?
So if you look at the, in front of the parentheses, EOH.
Oh, yeah, I see.
All
Okay,
right, page 3, Gino.
the next section is kind of a substantive change. It talks about mixed-use development in the town center where residential development on the first floor would be prohibited except by special permit. And this was a big item of contention at HLC because the legislation does not have provision for mixed-use development. It's just about housing. But most towns justifiably will like, well, we don't want to destroy our downtown and have just housing and no commercial. So they kind of came up with a compromise that says you can have mixed-use development and the housing part of it can constitute up to 25% of your minimum requirement. But the land area would not count as part of your land area. That doesn't affect us because we don't have a minimum land area anyway. And then we have two sub-districts in this draft, the other one being the town center, the other being Kendall Avenue. So in the Kendall Avenue district is kind of the opposite. Non-residential uses would require a special permit on the ground floor, so it gives that flexibility. The other part of it is the mixed-use development requirement would only apply to the BG and BP districts, which is most of the area anyway. But by not having it all required, it allows it lets us meet our requirement for housing with 41 North Main, and when we get to the maps, we're suggesting including a portion of the very large property behind 20 North Main Street, which has two large barns that could be potentially converted to housing. So that's the substantive.
Basically it gives us flexibility. If a great project comes up
Yeah,
by special permit, we can get it done.
exactly.
My only question, I'm gonna interrupt for 1 second. If somebody, is Marion still on?
No, she's not.
Okay, so you're watching if somebody does,
Yes.
okay, thank you. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, the next change on page 5, under lighting, it was suggested to add use LED lamps, which is in here now. And then on that same page, under dumpsters, originally there was something about keeping trash and recycling within the building. That was removed, and it just says outdoor dumpsters shall be screened using either fencing or plantings. And then next,
Page 7.
page 7, under talking about parking, we added parking shall be subordinate in this. It already said parking shall be subordinate in design and location to the principal building facade. And then we added while minimizing the extent of impervious surface. Since that's a major issue these days. And then there's another instance, oh no, on page 8 at the top under affordability requirements. The word affordable was added to before units. And then again, EOHLC was spelled out. So now it used to say all units affordable to households earning 80% or less of the HMI. It just simply says all affordable units must be eligible for listing in the SHI. Just a clear, it didn't change the meaning, just clearer language. And then number 3 on that page, under calculating the number of units, the rounding was clarified that if it's 5 or above, it's rounded up. If it's below, if it's 0.5 or above, rounded up. If it's below 0.5, it's rounded down. Then under site plan review, 5.7.9, the term or mixed use was added after multifamily. So site plan review is required for any multifamily or mixed use projects in the overlay district. And that's it for the language of the bylaw. And then the map.
Okay, now on page 3,
Okay.
the map on page 3, the one we have here is incorrect, right? Correct?
Yes.
And can you explain why it's incorrect? And when we send it to the state, it will be corrected, correct?
Yeah, the only difference on that is, as mentioned before, the two barns. The two barns could not be added at the time the consultant was working on this because the compliance model that the state requires could only do whole parcels. And that's like a 76-acre parcel, which we didn't want to include, but we just wanted to include a portion of it. Now the state can, they have a mechanism apparently for overriding that model, so you can include a portion of the parcel, not the whole parcel.
But when we send it to them, we can just take a magic marker and like shade it in, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
I just-
Also, we might be able to do something.
I just want to be very clear when we send it in that the map is
Include
proper.
The only other comment I had on the map was if we could just, in the key on the bottom of the map, do, coordinate with the language that we used in the document where we say BG business district and just have that same key
Right,
in there.
they flipped it on
I mean, it's fine if it says general business district, but also to, just like with having DHCD as well as the development housing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
It makes sense to have it be tied into our lingo. All right.
and then the other map is just a single parcel, so.
Yep, the other map is straightforward. All right. Does anyone have any questions? Frank?
I have a couple of things that I looked at. If we just want to go through them quickly. Page 1, I don't know if it needs it. I think we've talked about it before. But under definitions, number 2, affordable housing. The definition is 5.7. Well, that's this whole section. So is it 5.7 what? Should it be 5.7.3.1 or should it actually be a definition based on the state's definition of what is affordable housing?
Yeah, that is what it should be.
So maybe that needs to be. That's 5.7.32 affordable housing on the first page.
Yeah, maybe it should just say, housing that's eligible for listing on the subsidized housing inventory. Something like that, clarify it.
You guys okay with that change? Anybody okay with that? Okay. What else, Frank?
Page 2, it's number 12, it's another definition thing, and it may be right, I just don't know. So it's more of a question, but if it needs to be changed. It says multifamily housing is a building with 3 or more residential dwellings. So 2 is not considered multifamily?
No, this definition does come straight from the legislation. It's 3 or more units or 2 or more buildings. So you could have 2 duplexes, that counts. 2 duplexes on a single lot counts, but a single duplex doesn't count as multifamily. You could have 10 duplexes or 100 duplexes, it would all count as long as it's on a single parcel.
Page 3, we say ground floor, usages, we have community space, educational use, personal use. I just,
Personal services, you mean?
yeah, sorry, personal services. I'm not sure what personal services are.
Like a barber, hairdresser.
That a state definition too, some of this stuff was like relatively standardized language that we might not be familiar with, but
Yeah,
Nail salon,
yeah.
stuff like that. Absolutely.
This may be a mute point because as I continued reading, but I underlined it under page 5.7.7D, 2D, which is parking material. Parking services may be concrete, asphalt, decomposed granite, brick, or paver, including pervious material. I just wondering if we could somehow, like, put the wording in or prioritizing impervious, just so that it's just a little more sustainable, that water doesn't run off, and the issue with runoff, and we get more going into the ground and into our wells as opposed to not. So I don't know if there's a way, if we want to do that, but, and we talk about it a lot in all the rest of the parking areas where we're looking at pervious surfaces, but this was the only place that we really didn't.
So,
I guess that's the question, Gina, you're limited with zoning regulations. We've run into this before where we want to make recommendations on sustainability materials. That's kind of more of a design handbook question. So, I mean, parking materials would it make sense to just add, with an emphasis on
Pervious materials would be encouraged.
yeah, we just.
Or preferred or something.
Yeah,
I mean, it allows for pervious materials, but it also defines that, they can't just say, oh, here, it's a grass field where it's just sand and it doesn't have any good, the drainage is not.
Yeah, but if you put that in there and they're applying for a special permit, we can make that a stronger ask, correct?
absolutely. And yeah, it's gonna go through site plan review.
So if we put that in there, then they know what we would prefer. Okay.
That works for me, huh?
Okay.
That's it for me.
Patty, did you have anything else? Okay, we're still gonna get a couple more bites at this anyhow. But if everyone's okay, do I have a motion to approve section 5.7, multifamily overlay district, as a draft?
So
Moved and seconded. I should have said as amended. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Will? Aye. Frank?
aye.
Patty?
Aye.
And Chris is an aye. So the only thing is, make those changes if you could, Gino, make sure the maps on the back are corrected. And let's get it off to the state. Hopefully they'll give it a 2 thumbs up. Next stop will be town council, and then hopefully we'll get it all back in time for our hearings. Okay,
Okay.
thank you, everyone.
Good job.
Yeah, it's, I mean, we have an extra year and a half beyond the timeline that we've given it. I want to get it done. I want to get through town meeting this year, primarily because I don't want to pay Gino for another year. So if we can get this thing through, get it off our desk, I think it makes the town look like we're ahead of things. And this stuff is tied into how we're viewed and how we get grants. I believe that, and it's the right thing to do. And that way, if we get stuck in the spring and we have to tweak things a little bit, we have a whole another year and a half. Okay. You want to talk about public outreach? So we have scope of services. And if Gino wants to talk about it a little bit, and then you can also talk about, we have some remaining money. We have a $30,000 grant. And when does that have to be used by?
2 years from last June, so we have a year and a half.
Okay. And then when we're done, I'm gonna throw that back to Addie Mae as far as, now we have 19 grand. But talk about the consultant, and then what I would like to do is, if you guys like the idea of using almost 12 grand of the money, I'd like to vote on it. So Gino can start working with them and we can start working with them. And primarily, and then I'm gonna let you continue. What I really want from them is, I want them to give a very, very in-depth presentation at our hearing. And then I want them to scale it back, and at town meeting, I want them to give a 2.5-minute presentation at town meeting. Because at town meeting, we have 5 minutes, and I think I had asked Addie Mae to do the town meeting thing, but for that 2.5 minutes, or you want to make it a 5-minute, and you want to work with them on that, and pretty much have, that'll be your baby, but they're gonna help you.
We're
Manage it.
discussing this is for Springtown meeting in April.
Correct.
Right, okay. All right. Just
Okay.
to make sure I'm wrapping my head around thinking about 2 minutes versus 5 minutes for how far I would go, where you should go.
Well.
Yeah.
Well, what I had initially thought is if they do a long, like a 15-minute thing for our hearing, because I want all the details. And then for town meeting, I think we should have, because we only have 5 minutes, so I think we should have a cover page, which I'll work on with Gino as far as why we need to do this and why this has to be done now. For our hearing, we can give them all the time they want. If they want to go through all the details, I think that's great. For town meeting, again, if you wanted to do 2.5 minutes and you wanted them to do 2.5 minutes, or you wanted to do it jointly with Laura.
Jennifer or Laura?
Well,
Laura.
they showed three people on their proposal, Jennifer, Laura, and the third person who's their community engagement person. So it'll be one or both, one or two of them.
Okay.
I have a feeling we'll have a better sense of, after getting through the hearing, seeing what questions and concerns come up, and then we can strategize what makes the most sense.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
see how receptive and see, we've had different consultants, we've worked with Jan Goldson before, and they've been good to work with, and they know our town pretty well, but we've also had other consultants who don't, that set people off in town and don't clearly understand our town, and so we'll know better as we go through the process.
Well, because we've worked with her and she understands us and you like her, I thought that would be the best fit. And I don't think we had to look too far. I mean, to me, it seemed very, very straightforward. So anyhow, now I'll be quiet. Gino, if you want to talk about the scope of work.
Yeah, well, the main parts are the two presentations, but it does also include preparing a flyer and some graphics for the website, so.
Also has to look at some social media as well.
And so, yeah, exactly, and social media. And there is a number of meetings to make sure they're on track. So we could probably set up the first one sometime next week.
Okay, now my next question is, I'm happy to do it with Gino. I'm happy to do it, the three of us. I'm happy to do it, the four of us. Whatever you like, and you can think about that. We can schedule it. My days on Thursdays are very flexible, so we could do a Thursday afternoon maybe. But I think, I don't want a quorum, but if anyone on the board was gonna do it, I'd rather it be you. And if you can't do it, then that's fine. I mean, but the offer would be there.
And they know the Thursday afternoon schedule from working on the.
Yeah, because I told her you can do it anytime as long as it's Thursday at 2. All right, so nothing,
I'll contact them and try to set it up for our next Thursday.
perfect. So I would like to present a motion to approve the base scope of services and the timetable presented and authorize the amount of $11,891 to be used for this from a grant that we received from the state. Do I have a second? Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Will.
Aye.
Frank?
Aye.
Addie? Chris is an aye. All right. I know Addie's gonna think I'm throwing a thorn in the side here. And I don't wanna talk about it tonight. I wanna talk about it in the future. The one thing that I was thinking about with farm events, and I don't wanna discuss it tonight, but I do want the board to think about it. Maybe within that bylaw, we should be very clear that if there's a significant change from the current, like if somebody has a tomato stand and they want to have a demonstration on slicing tomatoes, well, I would think they would still need a site plan review to make sure parking's safe and all that stuff. But I don't think something like that would require a special permit. But maybe within the bylaw, we have to say, if there's X amount of change, and be very, because we make a lot of references to other things, maybe we want to put it in there saying special permit will be required. What are your thoughts, Gino? And I don't want to discuss it as a board. I just want in the future to sort of see what direction we want to take with this.
Yeah, well, the site plan review provisions in our bylaw kind of already does that, because it has the section on preliminary site plan.
I agree with you, but obviously it wasn't clear. Or clear enough. Do you think there's a way we can make it even clearer?
Yeah, I guess the way to make it clearer would be in the farm event section itself, put something in there.
Okay,
Like that.
okay. I don't want to talk about it any more than that. I would like to put it on the agenda for maybe the first meeting of December. Is that fair? Is that okay? And then we can think about it. It's not gonna be a hearing, it's not gonna be a big thing. I just want to see clarification. I want to be very, very, very clear what our expectations are. Is that fair? Is that fair?
Yeah, yeah, I guess if there's any draft or any language for the board to review or consider, we have a copy of that before that December meeting, just to kind of.
Well, we're not gonna vote on anything, so in that meeting, I would just like to sit around and really talk about how we can clean it up. And we might decide we don't wanna change anything. A lot of it will be decided by what we hear back. You know, I'm not proposing getting rid of it, but I don't want the kind of circus that this board had been put through. And maybe we need to be more clear in our bylaw. That's all. Okay, next item.
Can I just,
Yes,
can we as a planning board have an executive session with council to just talk about what the legal questions are that the planning boards have contested, or is that something, an opportunity for us as a planning board to have that kind of discussion? Because we can't discuss cases in an open meeting, but yet there's some things that have been happening that we haven't had a chance to discuss as far as what are the actual legal questions, because it's my understanding that the legal questions that are going forth really don't have anything to do with necessarily the language, and it was a timeline question. I guess. Does the rest of the board feel that it would be beneficial to request if we may have an executive session? We're allowed to have executive session to discuss legal matters as
I
a
know.
board. And
yeah, I don't even, let me think about it. I mean, we'll talk about it, and I'll speak to town council. I don't think it's really worth it to worry about it until we find how they rule, quite honestly. I just wanna see if there's a way that we can clarify, and maybe not even act on it, but just clarify and then be prepared to make changes if changes need to be made.
I mean, I think clearing up any of our bylaw language is always a goal, and it's
Yep.
why we always should be reviewing bylaws. There's a lot of process that is not clear. It's not just with our board, other boards have the same issues. So I'm all for looking at language and making sure that things are clear and making sure that there wasn't a double meaning on something, and making sure that timelines are clear.
That's all that I'm saying, that's all that I'm saying to look at this point. All right, but we'll do that for December, the first meeting in December. Is that fair?
Point of clarification
Yep.
on that, is there a meeting on December one?
I didn't mean December first, I was saying the first meeting in
No, I
December.
know, but I was asking about the November, will there be a meeting?
On November 21st, yes. And that's gonna be a Zoomer. So if, you're in Scranton, you can still Zoom in. And then before I close, I'm gonna tell you what I hope to talk about on November 21st. So that would be on December 5th. Okay. All right. Discussion of House Bill 2104, that's a long-term thing. I don't want to spend any time on it tonight, but at our next meeting, I'm gonna ask Heidi to update us on two bills at the State House that will have a significant impact on planning boards. And one of them was one that actually just came from Michael Lesser today. And the comment period ends on December 21st, and it has to do with all the concerns we had with siting solar, because now every town is dealing with the same baloney that we had to deal with. So if the board's okay with it, I was gonna talk to Michael Lesser, and I was gonna draft a letter in support of that bill with Gino. Are you guys okay with that?
I would like to look at the bill and more discussion about it.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna put that on the agenda for the 21st as well.
Perfect.
And then, it'll only give you one day, Heidi, to do all this stuff, but we'll work on it together. But again, because of the time, and I just got it when I was coming into the building from Michael. But I think this will help support towns that are basically going through the same thing we went through with the solar bylaw. Okay?
Chris, did you skip affordable housing, section 4.9?
I did.
Okay,
And I will come back to that.
Okay.
Complete streets money that's left over, Gino. Want to talk about that?
Yes, so our complete streets deadline for, not the roundabout, the previous complete streets project.
The one that we did.
Center Street.
Yep.
Is December 31st. And I had gotten a notice of, from the state saying, just a reminder that the deadline is up and you have 39,000 remaining in your account. And, we had previously
Do we have 39 or 29?
I don't remember, to be honest. Thought it was 30 something.
31.
31, okay. So, I asked them, we have that money, could we extend the scope of our project by adding the sidewalk from the end of this project, which was the crosswalk, across 27, down towards Farm Road? And they said, yeah, that sounds like a reasonable use of the money. So, yes, you just need to get us a request for an extension and information, cost estimate of the project.
Okay, so, and I asked you to reach out to Sean, correct?
Yes,
And you did.
and I did.
And what did he say?
He said he supports the project.
Okay, so, when the Duncan project was going on, with the sidewalk massacre conversation, one thing I promised, Jim Campbell is that, because $10,000 was set aside to go from the front walk of Pilgrim Church to Duncan. Right, so they set aside money for that. Pilgrim Church was okay with it when we promised they weren't gonna move the signs, we weren't gonna do anything like that. But Jim had asked, could you not come and dig up twice and have half a sidewalk and wait a year for the next part of the sidewalk? And I said, I will do my best to prevent that from happening. So we have 10,000, and then we have from sidewalk sort of north, and then 31,000 to do the rest of it, and they're gonna, and DPW is gonna have to do some cleaning up with that sidewalk in front of that house on the corner. There's no question about that, Sean had mentioned that, and if this is enough, then I think we should use it rather than lose it, and if Sean's in favor of it, so, thoughts? All right, so,
We need a motion to support the use of the remaining 2 or 3 complete streets funds towards the completion of this sidewalk.
Yep.
Across Anchor Street.
no,
No,
from
that's
Pilgrim Church to Farm Road.
Okay, from Pilgrim to Farm.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Addie Mae, aye.
And Chris is an aye. So far, we have $31,000 here. We had $30,000 from the other grant. We have the Odessa money. Let's talk about the Odessa money. So the Odessa thing that I've kind of, and again, not to sound like a bully, I purposely kept it on the agenda until it was resolved. I didn't want it forgotten about. Well, they sent us a check for 56,000, I think it was.
It was in the 50 something, I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, so I have it written down here somewhere. So anyhow, so Odessa is up to,
This is for
55
2 years or how many years?
for 2 years, 55,334.40.
Big and full.
Paid in full, paid in full. So, so there's 2 things that we need to talk about. Item number 1 is, let's put something in place so we don't have to hound them. We need an automatic, and Heidi's gonna work on that.
So you want an invoice sent to a certain time?
I want something on June 1st for them to know that we expect to be paid in 30 days or they're in violation of their special permit.
Well, July 31st is the goal, that's specified in the special permit.
Okay. So it goes, then it'll go out July 1st, whatever the date is. In other words, by the end of the time, we want our check. And because my fear is that time goes by, boards change, and these things get forgotten about, and they're not gonna sit and peel off a check unless we're hounding. So I want a mechanism to be in place where they automatically, and if they know what's coming, they're not gonna try to dodge it. And I'm not saying they did in the past, COVID, there was a lot of other things that happened. But I think from now moving forward, we have to make sure the funds are being expected. And I think as a planning board, and I know I've been saying this over and over, and I get tired of saying it, I think that we have to plan on using it for its intended purpose. That brings us to a discussion on November 21st regarding putting together an article. Last year, I kind of just got sick of having circle conversations, but I want to put together an article for a traffic study, post roundabout, crosswalk at Cider Hill, and some traffic calming. I would love to see more police cars on Coolidge Street and Western Ave, personally. I think, especially for the folks on Coolidge, they're very concerned, they've been to the select board multiple times. If all of a sudden, a bunch of police cars showed up and they knew that came through planning, through that special permit money, I think most people, except for my wife, speeding down Coolidge Street would be happy with that. But we'll talk about that on the 21st. The conversation came up when we talked about the crosswalk down at Cider Hill. Not to pick on, East Goulding people, but somebody's like, well, and it wasn't you. Somebody said, oh, why don't we have a crosswalk down there? Well, I took a drive down there the next morning on my way to work, and there's no sidewalk. So guess what? You can't have a crosswalk if there's no sidewalk.
Well, there's
So-
sidewalk going up and down South Main at that intersection.
There's no sidewalk to connect to. I looked. So,
Well, there's a sidewalk on South Main on the west side, where Goulding West is,
correct.
that goes north and south on Washington Street, so, you know.
But
There
if
may
you
not
have,
be one on the other side, but.
That's what
there's
I'm
one-
saying. You can
There
have a
is
cro-
one going across that
no sense in
intersection.
having a crosswalk that ends up on dirt.
But I think it just would be a valuable exercise to, since planning board historically has looked at connectivity and walkability and all the safety and kind of getting around town and the plan of the town, would be good to have an inventory of what's the complete list of ideal, where would we, all the places where the town could benefit from having crosswalk, and then prioritize,
Well, I agree with that.
and maybe in conjunction with traffic safety, but has, at some point, have a list that we are all aware of.
I agree with that. And if we're gonna talk about additional sidewalks, my vote right out of the gate would be Ivy Lane to Pilgrim Church. You know, now that we have the sidewalk going down and a crosswalk, imagine if all the people living on Ivy Lane and down that neighborhood could walk to the library. Their kids could walk to the library safely without walking on the street, without stepping in mud. And again, that's exactly what your point, right? Okay. But that's a discussion for next meeting. And Odessa will work on that. Town planner search. You did well. All right, I don't want to make this a long discussion. But let's look at the affordable housing bylaw. So my thought here were a couple things. And I'm gonna be very honest, I don't mind hurting feelings. Higley really wanted the 15%.
I think we all did,
No, I didn't.
well, no, okay, so you did not,
I did not.
at the time that was we had
We thought,
nothing,
well, what the thought is you get in safe harbor and the 15% allows for the difference in single family homes being built. And so basically by passing this, we're protected forever. Unfortunately, with that comes a lot of other consequences. You can't be anti-development and be on planning board, number one. You also, our primary job, part of our job is affordable housing, there's no question about it. But that's like one of 10 things that we do. I actually think this setup, the way it sets up, may stifle growth. Okay, guy wants to do a subdivision, and he's dealing with conservation. And there's nothing wrong with that. I support what conservation does. Then they're dealing with the Board of Health, and there's nothing wrong with that. I love the Board of Health. I support what the Board of Health does. Then they're dealing with open space subdivision bylaw. Then they're dealing with this. It may inhibit reasonable growth, number one. And again, I just want you to, board to know where I'm looking at this. The other thing that I'm wondering, and I spoke to Gino about it, when you look at payments in lieu, And I don't even know if this is legal, but let's take Coolidge Street, for instance. If there's any way that we can work it legally, and I don't know, this is what we need to look at, and Gino's gonna have some comments. If payments can be made to offset negative impacts to abutters by a large project. So in other words, instead of telling them, all right, you're gonna have to do this many units, we might wanna have the flexibility, and again, we have to find the legality, I'm just trying to get the board's sense. We might wanna be able to say, okay, well, do 10% and give us a payment for water sewer pipes for Meadowbrook, or a percentage, or money toward it, and then we can look for grants, and we can help close that gap. So those are the two things that I was thinking of. Now I'm gonna be quiet, have Gino comment, and then I wanna hear from the board. Gino, what are your thoughts?
Well, two thoughts.
And you're allowed to disagree with me.
Good.
Good.
Two thoughts are, one, what you're talking about is impact fees, which there's provision for affordable housing, but impact fees, there's not a provision for that in Massachusetts law. It's been tried before and lost in court. Some towns have gotten special legislation from the legislature to do it. But that's what we would need in order to do that, is some special legislation or general legislation that, and that's something that the planning community has been working on for like 30 years.
Okay, so I'm not crazy then.
No,
Okay,
you're not crazy. Secondly, if you recall, I felt even when the affordable housing bylaw was first adopted, that it was actually a barrier to housing. The 15% is not gonna produce affordable housing because it's not gonna produce any housing. And I think that's more true today than it was then, with the interest rates and construction costs. If you saw there's an article that just came out today in the Boston Globe about projects that are on hold, they're not being built because of, not specifically because of affordable housing, but because of interest rates and construction costs. And then kind of related to that, the 3A requirement limits affordability to 10%. Unless you hire a certified firm to do an analysis that shows that a higher number would not make it financially infeasible. And I know that such a study would be a waste of money because it would find that it's not financially feasible to have a high. I think 10% is still already a barrier for overall housing production, but at least it's consistent with the 40B, so it makes some sense. So I think I would strongly recommend reducing it to 10%, make it consistent with 3A, and make it apply to all projects besides 3A at 10% rather than 15.
Okay, thank you. Well, if you don't have anything, I mean, we're not gonna do anything with this, and quite honestly, I don't want this for this year's town meeting, because I want 3A this year. But I want the board to start thinking of, again, as Gino said, everyone knows we need affordable housing, right? Let's beat that drum. We also need $1 million houses. I mean, we need all kinds of housing. And again, I'm just afraid, and again, we want to preserve the town. Yes, we love the town, yes. I mean, we don't want to see big changes. But when you look at the town like a business, I think this stifles growth. Will, thoughts?
Have we heard from developers who looked at this and said this is palatable? Is that feedback that we've actually gotten?
Not sure.
Not sure. And it
I've
makes,
had conversations with developers in Sherborn, not talking about Sherborn's bylaw, but talking about Boston's
recent increase in affordable housing and how difficult it is to create housing. That one is even higher, I think, and I might be misremembering it, but it was maybe 17%, or do you remember?
Yeah, 17, and in some cases 20 is
So-
a new, recently increased to that.
But to the effect of what Gina's saying, that with interest rates and supply chain costs increasing, that it becomes nearly impossible to do a project with those.
So my,
Same thoughts on all of those specific, Sherborn.
I guess I remember attending many meetings and discussing with other town planners at the MIPC meetings about inclusionary zoning and how every meeting we would talk about what are we doing to, as our toolbox for helping create the affordable housing units that we needed, and it was, we were working, I guess myself and John Higley and Marion were on that, well, 10% would just keep you status quo, and when we're trying to get ahead, 10% is not enough. However, we were warned that and maybe we didn't fully appreciate that inclusionary zoning it doesn't get the same benefits as a 40B from the economic breaks and tax incentives and other incentives and financial support that the state gives to developers for a 40B project that doesn't happen when it's just a private development. So I think there's consideration, and there's clearly considerations that it is more expensive. I mean, that 3A zoning is 3A zoning is limited to 10% because it also is a process for private development. It's not a tax incentive process the same way 40B is. So the state clearly recognizes that it's more expensive to build the affordable units than it would be under 40B. And I do recall at the time people saying that they didn't recommend 15% because it would encourage potentially the developers to go in the direction of a 40B rather than doing an inclusionary zoning subdivision with Sherborn. So I think that, and we said, well, let's get the bylaw passed. And if we find that it's not working or it needs to be changed, that's what town meeting's for, and that's what bylaws are for. We look at things and they're not set in stone 100%. That being said, given that we are looking at 3A and given that the conversation kind of is hand in hand and that 3A has this limit of 10%, I do think that our energies would be, well, the education process would be out there. The conversation is similar to consider amending the bylaw at this town meeting and not waiting 2 years if we're going to. I mean, either way, it's not we would just be presenting amended language. The town meeting would be the voting, deciding factor on approving or not approving. But since the discussion and the rationales are similar to a degree, or they're at least in the same topic, I'd like to consider it as a board.
For this spring.
Yes.
No, I'm okay with it. I don't know if you saw the emails that came from a resident regarding, and I purposely wanted to talk about this, but I didn't want to all of a sudden put it on the agenda after town meeting. I specifically put it on there so people wouldn't say, oh, now you're changing this for Coolidge Street. Right? Did you see the emails regarding me basically calling me corrupt? Okay, so that's why, for me personally, I'm sick and tired of it. And I purposely put it out there because I think this needs to be addressed. I am willing to take it to town meeting. But this is also something that I thought, before we produce a warrant article, that we sit down and talk to advisory and have advisory. I think this really does hurt growth personally. And again, I went along with it because I think when the board looks united, but again, I think this is bad for housing, personally.
Along those lines, how do we, as a planning board, explain why 3 years later, or 4 years later, I guess, we're changing our minds on this?
I'm not worried about that. We can handle that. I'm worried about people saying I'm corrupt and this is some deal that I had with the developer
That's
on
what I'm
Coolidge
saying.
Street.
What's the rationale?
I mean,
If that's the suspicion, don't we need to have a good reason?
The rationale is that we're always looking at the bylaws. And
In 2020 now.
Interest rates, construction costs, both have dramatically increased.
yeah, but I didn't even like it back then. And I went along with it. So, and then when the 3A stuff came out, and I looked at that 10%, my first thought was, and I asked, should our bylaw be sort of in sync with 3A? And he said they're really two separate things. Because when I looked at the 10% and you have to justify going to 15, and then I look at this and I think, well then, as a town, we just basically, without any rationale other than saying it'll keep us in safe harbor. But it doesn't help us if it stifles most new development. And again, maybe if that's what people want, if that's what the town wants, that's fine. But I think it's fair for this board to have that discussion. And again, if it wasn't for the hatred that would be aimed at me, the board doesn't get all the nasty stuff. I get it.
Can we look at it from a slightly different perspective?
Yes, that's why I like it, Frank.
I don't know. Anyway. Should the Coolidge Street and Meadowbrook go through? Which is what why we created the district and all of that. Then the need and requirement for the 40Bs aren't as great. So do we have a little bit of extra time that since this is being worked out, that we have to address this, because it's not like we're trying to get into safe harbor, because this is something.
Yeah, but this isn't gonna help us, because this is not, I don't view this as.
So if we didn't have the Coolidge and the Meadowbrook, then we would be trying to get there much quicker, so we're trying to look at the developments that we're doing now.
This, and again, Eddie can interrupt, I'll allow you to interrupt. This, I don't think, is to get us into safe harbor. The thought was, if we're in safe harbor, this is a mechanism to keep us there.
Well, I think amending it would be a mechanism to keep it there. At the time that we were first, inclusionary zoning was something that the conversation started before I ever even came on the board. There was a draft back in, before 2016. So before we had a housing production plan, there was a draft language for inclusionary zoning. So we started working on it and we picked it up and put it down and picked it up and put it down. And then as, town faced more need to actually take some kind of action, and the discussion came for having a housing trust, then it was, okay, if you had a housing trust, how does a housing trust get funds? Well, if the housing trust is responsible for helping to produce housing, if we're really in a deficit, how would we even begin without, how do you get funds? Well, everyone said, well, there's a payment in lieu process. And there's a number of things that are in this bylaw that were a product of a number of years where we had nothing as a town, and we needed to address affordable housing. We're much more, over the last 5 years, we've had an entire cycle of having a housing production plan in effect. And as a town, I believe we're in a different place where we understand how some of these things work a little bit better. And the economics have changed also with the housing market. So I think looking at it and looking at the calculations and looking at it and saying, okay, we still need some form of inclusionary zoning, and what do we think makes sense? We still want this as a tool for our toolbox for ensuring that we maintain affordable housing, but is the formula we have set up right now the right one? I think it's worth looking at.
Okay.
Looking at with all the other external factors that maybe were different when we first created it.
But what is the timing of that? How soon do we need to do that?
Well, I think we're looking at the math problem. So we would go back and look at the math problem. We would look at, I think my gut says what we didn't fully appreciate was we kept saying, well, 15% is a lot lower than the 25% that developers are required to do for a 40B, and so how bad is 15%? If I recall the conversations that we had, 15% seemed reasonable. But what we didn't fully maybe understand was the math that developers get that they don't get when it's a private development and it's under our zoning and not a 40B because of the extra incentives the financial incentives. So understanding that, we're not developers and we're not in construction business, most of us, so understanding, what it takes, that calculation and what that difference of one house might make for, it would be nice, we have lots of really nice subdivisions in our community that are nice neighborhoods for people to live in, and we certainly don't want to discourage that, by having this inclusionary zoning, so we might need to look at how is the map adding up and what makes more sense to incentivize utilizing our subdivision bylaw.
Okay, so for the board, is it fair for our December 5th meeting to spend most of the meeting working on this, looking at it? Is that okay? Because I don't want to go much later than December, because if we want to make changes, and again, I personally would not want to bring this to town meeting this year. If Addie, you feel strongly, I'm okay with it. I'm concerned that it may hurt 3A, and I'm concerned about all the nastiness. And it will be directed at me. And I don't even care. But let's talk about this on December 5th, and let's have sit around the round table and really look at, if everyone can, if you can look at what other towns have done for a number, like what percentage of towns even have a bylaw like this? Do we have any idea? And if the towns that do have a bylaw like this, similar towns, I don't mean, Moscow or Cambridge, I'm talking about similar towns to us.
We had started a list, and that when we were looking at it, we looked at, and that was the thing, we found a number of towns said, well, and ours is a little bit, it is on the higher, because we said anything more than 2 houses. A lot of communities start the payment in lieu at 6 houses or more. So we made ours somewhat extreme, because we felt like we really needed to have a stronger mechanism for figuring out how to produce affordable housing. The language goes back years of initial drafts and process and education, and it's been a learning curve.
And if it's okay with the board, at that meeting, I'm gonna ask our advisory liaison to come to it. It'll be informal. Wear flip-flops and jeans, but we'll sit around the table and we'll just really look at this. So, Will, would you mind looking at what other towns, just pick 10 towns, 5 towns, similar towns, and find out how they manage it. Frank, what do you think? What can you contribute to bring to the meeting? What would be another thing that we should be looking at? Right, we're looking at what other towns do.
You might look at how many developments have been done in town since we passed this. And
0.
Compare it to, okay, so comparing to other towns with other, if we look at the statistics, if we're claiming that it's preventing growth, which it very well could be, having some data to back that up would help the argument.
Yeah, well, there's nothing going on in this. And again, I think it hurts all housing. Frank, I don't know, what other things should we be looking at?
I think that the things that we were looking at in the past, which at the time we said, okay, maybe it doesn't, maybe it is, they're right, and the reason is that developers aren't using it. But the point that we were looking at was how we were calculating their payment in lieu, and at what point do we start that payment in lieu at? What quantity of houses was the kind of the main things that we were wrestling with back in 2018 and 2019 and before. So I guess it was, the thing that I would look at is going and saying, you know, area towns and looking at their inclusionary bylaw, zoning bylaw, and at what unit of house, if they set it up, if it, you know, ours is at anything more than one house, all of a sudden it kicks in. So other communities, it seemed like typically it was at 6 houses, it kicked in. You know, looking at that, does that make more sense? Is there something in between 1 and 6, you know, 2 and 6? Is there, and also just looking at the formulas that other towns have for payment in lieu and looking at ours and saying, okay, you know, what makes sense? We did put a lot of thought into ours and trying to figure out how you come up with our concern was a payment in lieu needed to be enough to actually build something affordable. Maybe that's not our priority. Maybe as a town, we're in a different priority ahead of us as we're looking forward to, hopefully, the water sewer district being approved at the state legislature level and moving towards actually having a number of affordable units that we haven't had. So, you know, we might be in a different place at this point in our stage as a town.
I recall there was at least one select board member who was very much opposed to this. And a while ago, he asked me to go back and look at this. And again, my fear was I did not want to bring it post-town meeting because then it looked like I was holding back until that was done.
I think the 3A, again, I think the conversations are going to be similar. You're talking affordable housing and, you know, originally the state did not allow affordable housing as a component of 3A, but towns, because they are being mandated to have 10% affordable housing, has pushed fairly strongly to encourage 10% to be allowed. They capped it at 10% because of the economic realities.
All right, so let's put this on the agenda for December 5th. You know what? Can you guys work on the towns together and just each one pick 5? Can you guys do that and just give us a little presentation as far as what you find? And Heidi, if Gino, you can give her some input as far as how we should be looking at this. And again, as I said, you know, everyone likes to beat the affordable housing drum. Yeah, we need affordable housing. Everyone knows that. We also need regular housing. We need multifamily housing. We need everything. And we also need revenue. And we do need a certain amount of proper development. And I think, you know, by doing this, I just don't think we're doing our job by accepting it. And I understand. I was here when we talked about it, and I went along with it. But, and again, if it wasn't for all the BS, I would be saying, yep, let's do it this year. But if the board wants to do that, I'll put on my helmet and I'll let people send all kinds of emails about me. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
No. I have another topic.
Please go ahead.
So, we just got off a special town meeting and I think this board did a nice job of getting some things done there. And I want to publicly acknowledge and congratulate Addie and me for doing such a great job in the presentation and getting that to happen. That was a lot of work.
Sure did.
And I'll answer a lot of questions and working together with Mary and that was really great. You did a really great job.
Thank you.
You always do a great job. That's why we ask you to do those things.
I'd like to say something.
Please.
So Chris informed me recently that he's gonna be appointing a new associate member to the board, starting this week, so this appears to be my last meeting with you all. I wanted to take the opportunity to tell you that I have enjoyed working with the planning board, and I've learned a lot from you, and thank you for that. I'm surprised by this decision. I thought we had a conversation when my term was ending in June, where I expressed my interest and intent to stay on as associate member and willingness to go through the application process again, and was understood from that conversation that it was not necessary. So I'm surprised that you didn't bring it up, Chris, or run it by the board to share with the board that I'm being
it-
replaced.
There's one small thing that I get to do. And that's to have a say who is the associate member. 2 years,
I'm not debating that, you sent me an email one day before a meeting. I
Well, I don't
served
know
this
how
board
else we can
faithfully, and I would appreciate a face-to-face, or at least the opportunity to be invited to thank my colleagues who I've worked with professionally. You know, I like to do things eye to eye, which I think is an appropriate way to conduct business. So, anyway, I hope to see you and maybe here as a public presence. I hope that in the future, you can treat your public servants with a little bit more respect after 3 years of service. And that's what I have to say.
All right.
Is the, I guess that.
So last time we had multiple openings, 5 people stepped forward. Okay? And I did ask if you would have been interested at the time in the open position. There were
For running
five-
for running
Filling the open seats.
of Higley and Marion.
Right, so that wasn't an associate, that was an.
No, she was the associate, and I did ask first, I did. And I said, you know, I'm gonna open it up to you if you would like that spot first. So,
At that time, I was very new to associate
that's-
member, I wasn't ready to run.
that's fine, but then we had 5 people, one person, I didn't even consider. Is this being recorded?
Yeah.
We haven't adjourned our meeting.
That's okay, it's okay. I'm gonna say things about people when I don't. So, we had 5 people, one I discouraged right away. One, I said, you know, we can find something for you, but I don't think it's the best thing. Mostly, I don't want to say it on the recording. And then there was one gentleman who has lived in town a long time, super guy. I know him personally. I occasionally sail with him. And he had asked, and I had said, no. I said, you know, you can run, but I'm not going to support you. Frank has a history. In other words, we know how he conducts himself. We know that he comes to meetings. We know he'll be prepared. And Rob was the same way. So this person has then reached out to me. And I think as far as depth on the board, I think part of the process of having an associate member is giving people an opportunity, new people, an opportunity to get involved in the board. And so,
Is it always, I mean, I don't know, Gina, I don't know, I guess just in my experience, I came on and Grace Shepherd when I was the associate member and then Abby Fisk, and then she had to resign. And then we had nobody for a long time, and then Elizabeth came into the picture after attending a number of meetings. We invited her to consider the associate position. It did, I feel like, I guess you know, other than Grace, because she was already the associate when I joined, it seemed like all my past experiences, we as a board discussed the person interested in the associate position. I don't know, is it just the chair who decides?
typically the chair makes a recommendation.
I thought it was the chair recommending on behalf of the board.
No,
It's solely the chair's decision.
yes.
Okay, I guess I've never.
It's actually the town moderator's decision. But the town moderator will do the will of the chair unless you put Hitler up. I mean, unless you do something that she looks at and says, no way. So there's, yes.
Okay. I guess I don't know, I don't know that I've never, is it?
The whole
we don't
idea,
have
the whole idea is to get more people involved
Okay,
in local government. That's the whole idea. And I have somebody who's gonna be a dynamite associate member, who has a lot of time on his hands, and who hopefully will transition to a full member at some point. It's creating a farm team. So Anyhow, do I have a motion to adjourn?
It would have been great to have been included in some discussion or asked for my intent at all about my thing. I've been working really hard to try to learn on this board with every intention of running for a seat when the time is appropriate,
You
and
can
I
still
feel
run,
like I know
you can
enough.
still, you can still run for a seat.
But, and if there's something that I've done or failed to do, I would love getting that feedback. I hope to this not be the end of my public service. And I would like to know if I have somehow, you know, not met the expectations of the role. But of course, I want what's best for the board, and I want the board to, I follow the lead of your decision. And like I said, I've enjoyed working with each and every one of you, and I look forward to seeing you around town.
All right, thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Second? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Frank?
Aye.
Martin? This is an aye. All right, thank you, good night.